Earlier, I was reminded of that stupid scar that I have that I've talked about before. My camera kind of sucks. So, also, yeah. When it is visible, I will normally do something just in case. Even though my camera sucks and will not show most variations in pigment, like even in my hair. I don't know. Is it showing it right now? I mean, either it overcompensates and tries to, saturate me, or it washes me out. And whenever it's trying to saturate me, it's still kind of washing something out. So I'm gonna see real quick. Nah, actually I'm not. Because I really don't want to just pull my shirt down. But yeah. Today my scar was a little more visible, and it was weird. And then I have that. Lovely. So, yeah. Huh. I popped it earlier. Yeah, I would rather do that on camera than be like, yeah, totally, look at the scar. In certain positions, you can't even see it, on a bad day. Well, no. There was this one time whenever it was cold and humid, which is, really hard to run into in Arizona. I'm not sure that that's even easy, and, too bright. Turned up the brightness so I could see. Because, I keep it on 0, and now I am just blinded. So I can't even see half of what I'm taping. It's an interesting experience. What cat? You looking at me, paws crossed? Anyway. Yeah, it's still too bright. Even for glasses. I mean, with glasses. So, anyway. Yeah. I guess that's just a thing. I mean, some of my scars become more visible whenever weather is more extreme, or, just something like that. Or, if you're extremely, some of that one in particular is usually, it's easier to see, more so whenever there's been some level of, I didn't even notice, until Jean noticed. I mean, I never forget how I got it, or the gravity of that, but I'm kind of used to it being hard to see. and it's still kind of hard to see. I mean, you have to know exactly where it is and what you're looking at and what that change in pigment is. You have to know exactly where the slight raise that's still there is. You have to be able to follow it through the parts that transition from darker to lighter. It's basically a line that used to be extremely obvious, but then I got boobs, and it went from shoulder to hip to basically curving around my boob. So, I mean, that made it kind of hard to see, and it used to be, I think whenever I was little, it was closer to right across, closer to the right side a little bit, but as I got older, you grow and your skin, it doesn't magically stay in the same spot. But I know that the spot reminds Jean that my heart is right there. And not that this is any better of a spot. I mean, they're both kind of close to your heart, so. And if they had gotten any deeper, got me any different, I wouldn't be here. You have arteries and shit. You don't have to stab someone in the heart to kill them. As it is, the shock sent me into a seizure that almost resulted in my death anyway. So, I was 3. Yeah. So, it's one of those scars, though, that if you talk about it with the wrong person, they won't really, like, I don't know, it's just one of those things. I mean, Jean's found scars, I don't even remember how I got them. Like, I have so many scars. Most of them are harder to see. Mostly because I actually heal pretty well as far as scars go. And whenever I was younger, I used to put a lot of stuff on them to lighten my scars. And that was before I got boobs. So, I mean, now I don't. So, I've got, like, scars like that you can kind of vaguely see. But sometimes Jean just traces the scars on my back. And he'll go from stretch marks to scars and back, because I have, both. And sometimes he'll trace a spot and he'll ask what happened. This has gone on so long at this point he already knows. So, like, he doesn't ask as much. But if he's, like, forgotten, he's like, I forgot how this one happened. And I know by the feeling exactly where it is. Because those didn't happen whenever I was that little. Skin didn't stretch that much. So, yeah. My grandmother was kind of an evil bitch. So, there's actually this one where my grandmother did make me stitch myself up. And, yeah. Like, I had to turn around and then, like, you can't really see it. And I had to boil the needle, and it was just horrific. The shirt rode up, because it happened, like, right before mini camp. In my FFA chapter in high school. Yeah. There was a brief pact of secrecy between me and someone else. Because of it. So, yeah. Because, my shirt rode up, and they saw it. Like, I had something over it, but, like, it was bleeding through, and yeah. On the bright side, my grandmother never used that particular tactic ever again. She made a homemade cat o' nine tails. So, it caught the skin, and that's how that happened. Anyway, the scar is now barely distinguishable, so I guess I'm just supposed to forget that it happened. Sometimes that's what it feels like. I'm not necessarily sure that. Sometimes I'm not sure that scars that heal very well cosmetically are always a blessing, because you sort of get to a point whenever you. A girl I only saw once a year saw and recognized what was happening, and like recognized that I was hurt and hiding it, and knew exactly who did it without needing to be told because we talked, in I am Messenger and stuff, and she knew that my grandmother was mean. She just didn't know that she was that mean. We didn't talk about that stuff. I knew better. And that's what kind of family I had. If I talked about that, there was no question in my mind that my grandmother would know and find out, because she read all of my messages. So I could bitch and complain about her being mean. As long as I didn't talk about some of the things that she was doing, I could get away with it. So she read my emails, she read my messages on Messenger. I was not sexting online or anything. I had no history of doing anything like that. And I was a teenager, for Pete's sakes. It's not like I didn't know better. My grandfather just looked at who I was messaging, just to make sure that it was nobody unfamiliar, and if he saw someone new, he would just ask, "Who is this person? It's not some rando that you met online, right?" Well, he didn't say rando. It was random person, but it means the same thing. Just to make sure that it wasn't some random person. My grandmother would actually go through and read the messages. There's a difference between making sure that someone is safe and reading the messages and then punishing someone for talking about something that is part of life. My grandfather may not realize this, but that house was hell on earth for me. And no matter what cosmetic changes he makes to it, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to walk through those doors ever again. Because once I left, it just... What other way do I have to really truly leave that behind me? I imagine I could still walk in that room and tell you the spots that had my blood on them. How it got there and how long it took me to clean it up. Sometimes I couldn't even tell you how long it took for that to happen. Usually my grandmother stuck with small implements. Actually, after she stopped physically abusing me, she'd done so for so long, I had learned how to use it as a coping mechanism. It's actually how I got into cutting as a teenager. Because I didn't know how to deal with it without being caused harm. And whenever she stopped, I didn't know what to do anymore. Eventually I figured it out. Without a therapist doing it for me. Not that there weren't a couple who tried or fancied themselves able to fix me. That's the real kicker. Like, as far as my grandmother was concerned, it didn't matter why I was doing it. It was another reason for her to claim that there was something integrally wrong with me. And that And this is just another way in which she could cry for attention and use me. That's all it was. That's all I ever was to her. And I am not my grandmother, and I will never be my grandmother. I absolutely refuse to ever turn into that vile excuse of flesh. As much as I loved my grandmother, and as much as I will always love her, the things that she did were wrong. And my grandfather was at best oblivious. I mean, my grandmother tried to cauterize my fucking uterus. There was a point that she did a home version of a surgery, I guess. It was something that, I don't know if she came up with it or got the idea from someone else. There was no anesthetic. She cut open the backs of my heels and partially severed my Achilles. She could have permanently, fucked me up. And she did fuck me up for years. The spasms, because they were still damaged, were horrible. And there was a point whenever they actually kept me home from school. Because I could not, get my feet out of, they were basically cemented into my own ass. After the incident where she tried to cauterize me, I had complaints at school from people who said that I smelled, even though I showered every day, twice a day obsessively. And I had yeast infections, and just over-the-counter yeast medication, I guess. The thing is that doctors were involved. They just decided that they would just question me on if I was sticking things up there. And I wasn't. I was actually pretty terrified of the very idea at that point. And I just told them, no, it just hurts. One doctor, she meant well. She even sent my grandmother out of the room to ask me if I was doing that, and I told her no. I mean, later on as an adult, I did try some things, and not all of them were good ideas, like that one brush handle. Yeah. I was no, it wasn't quite an adult, but maybe close. I was still young, and it was stupid. I've actually talked to people who've tried worse things, and ER situations assure me that people have tried stupider. At least it was the right shape. Sort of. There are things people have, beer bottles, and it's just weird, okay? But there were, I think everybody goes through at least one stupid decision like that, but I didn't do that at the age that, like, you're usually already doing that. Because I was just surviving and trying not to make anything worse, you know? So, yeah. They would just question me, then chalk it up to, just don't take baths for a week,